I'm Stephanie Wilson, and you're listening to Freedom Over Fascism.
What I found, look, most people just want someone to listen to them. Even they may not agree with what you're saying, that's the starting point of listening. Try to have the audacity to find the common ground, to take those first steps. Because if you do that, you start having conversations and you show them that you respect them enough to listen.
Hi, friends. Welcome back to Freedom Over Fascism. We're back again with new conversations after taking some time over the summer to regroup. I haven't been silent. You can find my thoughts over the past couple of months on the Substack, www.freedomoverfascism.us. After the Biden-Trump debate, the Democratic Party seemed like it was cracking down the middle. Some wanted Biden to step down. Many of us were terrified of the chaos an open convention would bring. But ultimately, President Biden stepped aside and endorsed Vice President Harris with impeccable timing. And we watched and participated in the Democratic Party uniting around Kamala with record speed. And once we started going to the organizing Zooms, raising money, we leapt into the Veep stakes with both feet. I'm recording this on Tuesday, August 6th, the day Vice President Harris chose Minnesota Governor Tim Walz to be her running mate. And though we all had different favorites, we're all in now for the Harris-Walz ticket. And the more I learn about Tim Walz, the more impressed I am. He brings the joy. He brings the coach. He brings the teacher. And he brings the thunder. He spent decades as a teacher and as a sergeant major in the Army National Guard. I hadn't known what a command master sergeant was before today. That's the guy who rises through the ranks from private to become one of the people who are the backbone of our military and the advisors to our commanders, meaning he knows how to give advice in a way that a commanding officer can hear, and when things get fucked, he unfucks them. As excited as we all are about the presidential ticket of Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, we need to keep in mind the importance of running and winning local and state campaigns. That's the way we build real power and a deep bench. Recently, I spoke with Zeb Smathers, mayor of Canton, North Carolina, a small town in the mountains outside of Asheville. Mayor Smathers is a New Deal leader. Remember, we spoke to Debbie Cox Bolton, the director of New Deal Leaders, last year. What Mayor Smathers reminds us is that in local politics, solutions matter. You need to fix the pothole or bail out your town from a record flood or get the garbage picked up, and it doesn't matter what your background, your party, or your potential is. My conversation with him took place over 2 sittings, and sometimes the audio gets a little wonky. But I hope you listen and think about how important it is to act locally, because that's where your voice matters the most. And as we think about the next 3 months leading up to the election, we have to make sure we're paying attention to every race up and down the ballot, as well as the presidential, because freedom starts at home. Mayor Zeb Smathers, welcome to Freedom Over Fascism.
Oh, proud to be here.
You're from Canton, North Carolina. Can you tell us a little bit about Canton and then why you decided to get
Yeah.
involved?
Canton is a small town about 20 minutes west of Asheville, North Carolina, in the mountains of North Carolina. I have a 4-year-old Stone, and on both sides, he is the 9th generation for both my wife and myself. We've been in these mountains a very long time. I was born in 1982. My first understanding of politics really was when my grandfather passed away in May 15th, 1994. It was a shock. Now, my grandfather, even though he was unelected, was a pillar of the community. He went to World War II. He fought in Australia, and then he came back and opened a small business. This grocery store really was the focal point of the community. But also, there's a lot of things I really hold deep to myself. This was again, the 60s, 50s, and 60s in the South. He didn't have separate facilities. He let African Americans buy on credit. He really put his Christian faith, not just talking about it, but living by it and loving and just his amazing community person. But he wasn't elected. And I remember my grandmother was in shock. I was put in charge of answering the phone, her rotary phone, and I get a call from the governor, Governor Jim Hunt, a legendary governor in North Carolina. And I remember asking my dad afterwards, is why is the governor calling to send his condolences? And that's when I started realizing this whole political game, I hate calling it a game, but that was our connection. And then dad ran for mayor in 1999 when I was in high school. And he was mayor until 2011, 2001. Graduated high school. I went to Duke University. I was 2 weeks a freshman at Duke, 9/11 hit. Then
Mm.
after Duke, I went 9 miles down the road to UNC, to Chapel Hill, where I went to law school. So, but then I came home. We had a lot of boarded up businesses. We had no restaurants. We didn't have a brewery. You can't be a small town these days unless you have a brewery, as you have to have. What has to? It's standard. But none of that existed. But spending 7 years in the Triangle, and even politically, you being there at 9/11 and then graduating with the election of Barack Obama, watching those political pendulums swing, but also watching Raleigh and Durham, the growth, good and bad that comes with growth. And at this point, Asheville was becoming this mecca in the South for food and beer. The Obamas visited several times. And then I had this eureka moment. I said, wait a second, something is getting ready to happen to Kent, whether we like it or not, whether we can control it or not. That growth is coming our way. And we're only 20 minutes outside of Asheville. We're a paper mill town. It sits in the middle of our town. Until recently, 115 years, it employed 1,100 people. Our high school athletics, they have Milltown on their uniforms. We're a mill town. And we started to embrace that. Once we started embracing who we were, that we were a mill town, we didn't want to be a tourist town. We weren't this. Amazing things started happening. I ran for elected office on city council in 2013. Downtown occupancy was about 20%. We built that back up to 90s with small businesses. But we also changed the mentality. And I believe, just like in North Carolina, there's more Cantons than Charlotte. That doesn't take away from the big cities. But if you understand small towns like Canton and the hopes and desires of these people and what their ambitions are, their successes, their setbacks, it really sets across the United States a fabric of really understanding people and what we need to do to move forward. And so we started building our town back. Then the pandemic hit in 21. We had floods hit us. It's amazing. My town is roughly 3,000 feet above sea level. I had to check tropic forecast. Like I'm 300 feet above sea level because of
Wow.
hurricanes in the Gulf. And again, the climate has definitely changed. The last 2 winters, we've had no snow and we're dealing with flooding, but we lost 6 people. We lost our town hall, our fire station, our police
Oh, my.
station, our river district, about 250 homes, just a tremendous catastrophic flood event. And so we've been very involved in that. That was 21. 22, we start making it. In 23, March 6th, I get word from the paper plant that they are announcing closure. It will be closed in 3 months. So this lifeblood of our community, culturally, economically, just in shambles. It just out of nowhere. I think a lot of it comes down to respect. I think that, not to jump farther down into the story, but I think we see there are companies out there, people and companies, they may pat you on your head, they may sponsor a 5K, but do they respect you? And I think once again, you saw people in Canton, we were just numbers on a spreadsheet
Mm.
that understand or care for our economy. They didn't care about the environmental mess. This was just a business transaction. For us, this is home. This is where I decided to come back to. I had a lot of opportunities to go a lot of other places, but this is home. This is the place that made me. And being mayor of a town, other than marrying my wife, is the highest honor because this is home and people are looking to myself and my team now for better days. And it's worth fighting for. Again, the people in these small towns, they matter. And local government matters. To me, local government is the best type of government because it's closest to people. I can promise you, if your trash is not picked up, they do not care if you're Democrat or Republican. They know what church pew you sit on. They see you in the grocery store. You can't run off behind press secretaries or to DC or to Raleigh. You have to get things done. I think people understand there's a time and place for politics, but people want to see their elected leaders lean in, get things done, because they do still believe all the craziest. There's good people out there, Democrats and Republicans, that want to make this a better place. It's just we're distracted from the division. And I like to say the political industrial complex where people are making money by keeping us divided. They don't want solutions. There's no money in solutions. I signed up for solutions. I don't have a lot of respect for the politicians who find excuses and cop outs Some of us have a job to do, and I think that's the beauty of small town government and being a mayor.
Being a mayor, but not not having it be your full-time job because it's unpaid. How did you manage with all those with the natural disasters and with the closure of the mill? How did you find the time and the team and the resources to help the town?
I have a very loving and understanding wife. That's the first step. This is the community that made me. I think something that all of us go through is that we always talk about what's next, and we forget to take the moment and look back on the people and institution and coaches and churches that made us who we were. I'm a product of this town. I'm a product of its public schools and coaches and churches, and they gave me the opportunity to be able to go to Duke, to travel around the world, to go to law school, even in court. I represent my friends and family at times. The very least I can do in the moments of it's the hardest hours, the most challenging hours, that I'm here to step up and I can hold these friends and family and say there's better days ahead, even though I don't have all the answers. How do you tell a
Mhm.
mill worker who's 3 years from retiring that they're going to have to get retrained if they don't have a job? Same mill workers hold you close and say they're praying for you. There's such a humanity. The mill is not just for 115 years been our economic driver. It's been the heart of our culture. We're a mill town. We're proud to be a mill town. And sadly, so many towns like Canton across the US in the last 20 years have lost these factories. And when you lose factory jobs and manufacturing jobs, you lose more than just the heartbeat of your economy. It gave people purpose. It paid for college educations. I know that there were foster families that the only gift they received at Christmas was because of meal donations.
Mm.
It sits in our town and it's just been who we are. And you need those identities. And looking back a year later, if you look at some numbers, and I think we're seeing this politically, if you look at economic index numbers, it tells one story. But when you talk to people and people that are driving farther and making less, it tells a different story. And so a lot of these people on paper have recovered, but just recently I had to help a mill worker find money to pay his mortgage. The
Mhm.
mental health side of things. Worry, I think a lot of people, males and females in places like Canton, they see especially the larger political system not working for them. I worry about it pushing them farther away from the mainstream. It's hopelessness. I mean, you had workers
Mhm.
that worked for 20 years with their friends, they had security, and then corporate decisions completely brought that down around them. And something that I see time and time again, whether it be healthcare, dealing with issues with the mill, it comes down to respect. The people in these communities, they're deserving of respect. Their successes, their failures, their setbacks, their hopes. We're not just numbers on a spreadsheet. And when you deal with people that are making decisions based upon what a spreadsheet says, it only tells a very small part of that. And look, people have to make money and corporations are out there to do that. But you don't just have to do it in a way that doesn't understand that you are making decisions that are truly going to affect generations. We're making it. We've come a long way. There's a lot more to decide. I've got a $1.4 million hole in my budget because of Evergreen's business decision. But I'm still checking on mill workers. You can sense the despair, but we're also learning how to put one foot in front of the other. I think Canton, like so many people and places in the United States and world, we've all been through something. We've all been through trauma. Again, there's a lot of tables with empty chairs at them. They may be because of COVID. They may be because of a natural death. It may be because of a job loss or a broken home. I think all of us are putting one foot in front of the other, but that is the only way to do it. If there's a better way, I'm all ears. But the people of Canton and Haywood County, we've been through challenges before. We've been through flooding. We've been through economic downturns. This is the worst it's ever been, but we're still putting one boot in front of the other. And that's all we can do. But I think there's some toughness there. There's some resiliency there. And as much as people want to say, we feel bad for you in Canton, we don't want our story to be one of pity. We want to be inspirational. If we can make it through, we want other towns that are going through similar but different situations to, hey, look what that town did. Look how tough they were. Look how better they made themselves against all odds. We want our story to be hopeful at the end of the day. And I think that's shared across the country.
I think it is. But this is a kind of a fraught moment
Uh-huh.
nationally as well as locally. How has the national political atmosphere affected you in Canton from a standpoint of you being mayor or the standpoint of the community and whether it's feeling fractured?
It has and it hasn't. And it hasn't because from 0 hour during the floods of 2001, when we lost 6 people, over 250 homes, our town hall, our fire department, our river district, the leaders, and I understand I am a blue dot in a red sea, but there was an effort from Canton and our Haywood County commissioners to Raleigh to DC. We are going to make this bipartisan. And we're not just going to say that for a nice soundbite. We're going to show the people. And that's exactly what we did at the mill closing. That's not just, again, been a tagline. We have put together a coalition, Republicans, Democrats, local, state, and federal, that have done right by the people of this town. They may not agree on a whole lot, but they agree on let's figure out the solutions, let's work together. And here's the thing, once you see that, once you experience it, once you're a part of it, you don't have to accept anything less. I
Mhm.
tell people this is one of my go tos is that President Eisenhower warned us of the military industrial complex, the threat that had to our country, democracy, our values, our economy. We are suffering, and I do mean suffering from the political industrial complex. You have major moneyed forces where the power is in division. It is in keeping us together. And then even sadly, they'll do one thing and then behind the scenes, they'll say, that's just business, etc. You don't have to accept that. Part of our problem, we're to blame. We've accepted it. But we want one of the lasting legacies of what Canton's been through in Haywood County, though not perfect, as a sign of saying, look what happens when people come together. You're not going to agree on everything. There's a time and
Right.
place for politics. You have people, Democrats, Republicans, males, females, all races, all backgrounds across this country that are truly wondering how they're going to put their kids through school and provide for health care and get their driver's license back and deal with mental health issues of their children. They're going through that and they look to DC and their state capitals and they see leaders that are just pandering and dividing and basically chasing partisan butterflies on things that do not matter. It's disgusting. It's disrespectful to them. Again, it comes down to respect. And when you're in local government, I don't care what size of city or town you're in, if your trash isn't picked up, they don't care if you're Democrat or Republican. You have to find answers and solutions. It's practical leadership. And so when you see it and you know it exists, it's okay to demand that from political leaders up and down the chain of your own party, of a different party to do better. Until we demand better because we know it exists, we're going to keep getting this. And I think it's truly having catastrophic and dangerous consequences on our country, both short term and long term.
What is the makeup of Canton in terms of demographics, in terms of politics, race, age, kinds of jobs? What does that look like?
We're 20 minutes west of Asheville, which is a very blue county and city, metropolitan. We are closer to many other state capitals than our own. We're a town in the city limits, roughly about 4,500, but half the county roughly considers themselves Canton, but they don't pay taxes or they can't vote or not vote for me. They think they
Mhm.
can. They think they can, but they can't. So the city limits are relatively small. We were a Democratic stronghold for a long time. We were until recently a union town. A lot of the jobs at the mill were union, even in a state where it's a right to work state. So it's a little bit different than some of our other states where unions are present. Um, it definitely has shifted red. I think you see a lot of the issues and controversies other places, but sometimes not as much. It is, you got people that, again, I think really believe in choosing the right person and they want us to do a good job. I have a lot of Republican support. I have a lot of Democrat support. I don't hide this. I've voted for Republicans. I've voted for Democrats. I come from a long Democratic family. I think I would classify us not so much as a purple county, but a moderate county. So there's shifts, there's different situations, but they're really, especially after what we've been through the last several years, I truly feel we're in a bipartisan age. And I know there are Republicans that have my back and I have their back. And I think people
Mhm.
want to see that. Again, I think places like Haywood County, they know that you have to be a Democrat or a Republican. They don't want you to act like a Democrat or a Republican. And so we're a majority white. We have a small minority population, but that's changing. I'm seeing a lot of influx of people from other places, Democrats and Republicans, especially after COVID. It's a beautiful area in the mountains of West North Carolina, but also seeing an increase in Hispanics. But again, even flooding, I was at this the American Flood Coalition, at a wonderful conference, bipartisan conference a few weeks ago in DC. And one thing came up was like, look, there's a lot of people that are living on the coasts, North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, Louisiana, Texas, very wealthy in some areas. And because of insurance and the risk, not only are we going to see an expansion of population, we're going to see that variable of people finally say, I'm getting out of here.
Mhm.
We're going to move to higher ground. So we're seeing population influx from a lot of different areas. And now that the mill's closed, it is something we're definitely seeing we've never seen before. And the one thing that keeps me up at night more than anything is affordability. All of this ties
Mhm.
into the affordability of everything. I wonder where some of my friends, especially workers, blue collar workers, are going to live. When you have houses
Mhm.
that were on the market for 325,000 a few years ago that are now $700,000 and they're selling, who buys those homes? And
Right.
again, that is the effect it has on the middle class, the ability to raise your children, how expensive everything is. I worry about the region turning into a Jackson Hole situation, Southern California, Florida, where it is a stress. Where do your workers go, especially in tourism? That's what
Mhm.
keeps me up at night more than anything.
Right.
Affordability.
I think that goes for almost every part of the country. Do you sense, and I think you've answered this, but I just wanna ask it directly. Do you sense that the people that you work with on the political level are operating in good faith on both sides, or is there a lot of posturing like there is nationally?
I think good faith. Again, I don't lose sleep under knowing that people from a different party have my back. We're not always going to agree. Sometimes we
Mhm.
all may hold our breath and have issues. And there's a
Mhm.
time and place for that. There's a time and place for national politics. But again, I think people also realize here that a lot of issues, social issues especially, that has no place in our boardrooms. Like we are dealing with major issues here. And also, we have no power over that. And that's not a cop out. That's just
Mhm.
reality. And I think the one thing that has surprised me is how many people I've talked to in DC, in Raleigh, the behind the scenes, they tell you a different story. And again, and I see it on both sides. Profiles and courage matter. Speaking out, I think we all know the problem is and ways to fix it. You have to have the courage to do that. And if God and the people put you in a place to lead, they want leadership. And again, people always ask me, well, Zeb, you're a mayor of a small town. What's next? I don't know, but I do know you cannot get happiness from politics. If you
Mhm.
do, you're destined to be miserable. And I think you have to look at people that have gotten so far in the system, they've gotten withdrawn from the issues at hand. And
Right.
we need, and I, 'cause again, if I hadn't have seen it firsthand the last 2 years through our crises, then I might be on this show peddling some version of partisanship wrapped up as, hey, let's come together. Man, people want cooperation. It exists every single day. And I think people find it refreshing. They want leadership. I just think you have to have the audacity and the courage to go there. And guess what? If that takes you to the end of Main Street, it takes you to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. At the end of the day, you did it the right way. And you can look your children in the eye, your community in the eye, and say, look, we're making this about leadership. And until we do, we will continue to get exactly the division, the controversies, the dog and pony show, the circus that's just not accomplishing anything. The wolves are at the door. We have serious, again, I'm a movie guy, so it's still a line from the American president. This is a serious time and we need serious people to solve them. And there just seems a lack of seriousness out there, and people need leaders. And I'll say this, they still believe they're out there. Democrats and Republicans, they still feel elected leaders of all parties, of all backgrounds, of all areas. There are good out people out there that can make their lives better. We haven't lost that. We've lost a lot, but people still believe it's our job not to let them down.
Yeah, I was in DC for family stuff, and when I was in the city, it seemed so normal, like, took my son to a museum, like,
Yes.
we drove around, looked at the monuments, and then I had in my mind what the major issues are and what these crusaders really want to do, and they were, what, blocks from where we were? Um, and they exist, and it seemed so surreal to be in a place where, most of the time we were at family lunches and family dinners, and that's why we're there. But then thinking about all of the other overlay, it's really surreal.
Mhm.
And so, while I hear what you're saying about people want folks to get along and solve their problems, there's also this big philosophical difference.
Mhm.
Perhaps not at the local level, but definitely at the national level of the kind of society people want. So, two questions. One is, do you think you are able to bypass that in the service of local needs, but also how much of that ideological difference in how we should live and be governed
Mhm.
do you find in Canton?
I think it's a balance. And it's a very good question. It's a difficult question, but it's one that we have to face. Just the idea of saying, hey, look, guys, we're working together in flood and mill closing, that's not enough. I think what it does is it proves that we can do better. And so again, I think team's been losing, you gotta learn how to win again. And I think
Right.
once you see it, well, guys, we can do better. And that doesn't mean you're always going to agree. It doesn't make that everything's going to just be great. Going back to the quote unquote best times in our, we always like, we used to do it this way. It's not like Washington and politics has ever been a wonderful place of kumbaya moments. But I do think that the society is begging for something better right now. But at the same time, there are limits. But you can't be blind or stick your head in the sand to some of the stuff that is going around. I've seen it, and I've seen this locally. I've seen it obviously nationally. My grandfather on my mother's side got a Purple Heart in World War II, fighting the Nazis, and helped liberate Holocaust camps in World War II. That was my grandfather. Okay. It is absolutely sickening, disgusting, and without any excuse to stand by and listen, promote, tolerate, or even consider people that are peddling that absolute anti-American garbage. I'm sorry. I don't need to say anything more. My grandfather and so many men and women, and part of what created us to be the greatest country in the world, which we are, was standing up to these monsters and what they stood for, some publicly, some privately, some in industry, some in politics, some in business. Because that should be a profile in courage. Standing up to people that are advocating for death and destruction of American values and what makes us great. There's no toleration for it. There can't be. Guys, because again, history teaches us that if you let it fester, before too long, it will take over. And there are moments right now, I think, between Democrats, Republicans, independents, stand up for what's right. Again, you can't pick and choose what star and stripe you want. If you're going to love your country, you have to love every part of it, the good, the bad, the hard, the difficult, and the unknowns. And it's not just a given. You can't talk about the importance of veterans and military and the ones that came before and the sacrifices. They made sacrifices for a great, loving, open country that was a lot to the world, not one that was small and just open to some. But again, you have to show we can do better. We deserve better. Our people deserve better. But at the same time, let's reach for our highest ideals. That's what we were. I think one of the great tragedies of our time is we have shrunk the greatness of this country. It is open to all. And
Mhm.
it's finding the solutions. It's solving the big problems. It's bringing everyone along. It doesn't mean you're always going to agree, but the America that we talk about isn't small. It's great. It's big. It's open. The experiment goes on. But if we don't pay attention and let the wolves take over, especially the one dressed as sheep, we'll regret that. And we're letting down our forefathers, especially the ones like my grandfather who fought these monsters and the ones that made
Right.
pay the ultimate sacrifice.
That's
Again,
right.
you can't honor the ones before you unless you are willing to stand up and say, this is wrong and we deserve better. But again, to also change course, one thing that influences everything from local to national, I think that has pace anything social media has brought good has brought tenfold bad. I see it through my law practice. I see it locally. I see it nationally because what sometimes social media can do is it can legitimize unserious ideas in people. And there are times and places, yes, you can, there, we have freedoms and you need to discuss things, but there are ideas that should not be legitimated. There are crazy, outrageous, and dangerous thoughts that shouldn't be put on the same plane as people trying to solve issues. Social media has equalized the playing field, and facts have been the greatest sacrifice to that, where people's perceptions are governed by headlines, not even read the story. I joke sometimes you know, I could put the winning lottery numbers in a story and no one's going to win because no one's reading the story, whether it's behind a
Right.
paywall or they're not reading the story. They're just reading the sensationalized headline. That's dangerous. And again, we need people to think and to question, even the people, even their own parties and their own leaders. That is such an important part of the citizens. You don't need to be an elected official to lead. You need to question, but it needs to be fact based. And you got to be able to determine by the people that are serious and the ones that are not, because there is a difference.
I do wanna know, how do you cut through that crap that people are getting on social media and on cable news and maybe even local station if they're owned by ideologues, and get to the shared values of the American dream, freedom for all, the inclusive nature of a multicultural democracy? How do you cut through to the shared values?
I think first off, you listen. The power lies in listening, seeing why they believe what they believe. Now, some people and some things, it's just nonsensical, especially when you talk about some of the, I'm never going to listen to a Nazi. Call me old fashioned, not going to. But that's such a minority. It really is. But people that you may have very differing views on, call it COVID, whatever, listen, see where they're coming from. Try to have the audacity to find the common ground to take those first steps. Because if you do that, you start having conversations and you show them that you respect them enough to listen. Never forget the power of what it shows when you listen to someone other than just talking over them or throwing them to the side. And the great danger is if you don't listen and you just discount them, they don't know what they're talking about. They're an idiot. You're pushing them farther and farther to the point. What I found, look, most people just want someone to listen to them. Even they may not agree with what you're saying, that's the starting point of listening. Also, I think you have to play the long game and understand some of the smoke and mirrors and the circus, it can't last. There's no underpinnings of factual knowledge. We've seen it with the mill closing for a year. I heard this is coming. I talked to this person. I go, it's not true. Sadly, sometimes people on their own have to come to their own conclusions of what they've been told is simply not true. You don't need to force feed it. You just need to listen and just state your claim. But if you, especially factual driven stuff, at some point it's going to come out. It's my favorite quotes is from Mark Twain that a lie gets halfway around the world before the truth gets its pants on. But at some point, the truth does catch up. Then you have to play the long game. But I think again, you have to listen, you have to be respectful and see where the compromise is. And when those things do come, because most people are, again, they're looking out there for better days. They may come at it differently than you, but their goals and ambitions are the same.
So, if you had one thing to tell us about focusing locally and changing the conversation to one of good faith and mutual respect and listening, how would you suggest that people start to get there?
I think in the elected realm, get involved. I'm a big Teddy Roosevelt fan. Get in the arena. There are a lot of people, and I know for good reasons. Trust me, I get paid zero to be mayor. I don't enjoy seeing my name on social media posts and complete nonsense at times, but I'm in the arena. And the great American decisions now and in the past are being made by the ones that are present. And even if you lose, you need to be out there. Now, you don't need to be on a just saying what you want to say, but you got to be involved. And I understand why you wouldn't want to be. but you have to be paying attention. You have to get involved, whether you like it or not. This is the process. But again, some things we've discussed here today, they don't require you to be elected. It requires you to care and to listen and take steps and saying it, because also respect, there is a lot of anger out there. And some of that anger is not unfounded. I see with mill workers here we have, I mean, in the day's closing, it was like, we'll just, we'll retrain them and they can do this and that. Now, again, it was a little jokingly, but I said to somebody, I mean, some of these bubbas, you can't make baristas. I mean, they know hard American work, and it's disrespectful people showing up and just trying to say, "Hey, you did 20 years of hard labor. Now we're going to turn you into this and that. You'll learn to operate AI machines." Guys, no. And I think just saying that comes off as disrespectful.
Mhm.
So I think you got to understand your crowd and where you're at and look for the common situations. But people can do that. They can do their own families. This was after the murder of George Floyd. And being in North Carolina, I know in so many areas in the African American community that the churches serve as town halls. Their ministers are their mayors. And I remember reaching out to a woman minister, and she appreciated me calling and checking on and talking about what was happening. But there was a pause, and she said, "Zeb, it matters what happens thousands of miles away. But the question of our time is, what are we doing in our own backyard? Are you getting your weeds out of your garden? Are you making the ground more fertile for growth? Or are you accepting help? Are you helping others? Because if you're tending to your own garden and you encourage your neighbor to do a better job tending their garden next door, and then their neighbor sees what collectively you both are doing and individually, that creates collective change. And you don't have to do anything but leave your own yard. That is the bare minimum that I think we all can be doing. Some of us may influence nations and economies and world history. Some won't, but both are powerful in their own way. But again, what are we doing simply in our own back door with our own children? Again, I think you see this with social issues. So many can be solved or made better by saying, are you raising good kids? Are you mentoring? Are you being involved? Don't come to
Mhm.
politicians asking us. We're sinful creatures. Don't come to us asking to solve your problems. What are you doing in your backyard? And I think that opens up a lot of possibilities and looking at this world differently, but better long term.
The main purpose that I'm trying to achieve is trying to help people see how they can make change where they are, and that they don't have to be an elected official in Washington. They don't have to they should run for local office, because we need to be having people of good faith and our values running at every level. But a lot of what we need to do as a country will be done locally,
Mm.
can be done locally. I really think that focusing on what can I do in the room where I will be heard the loudest, because people know me and trust me, and align that with our larger values. That's what I'm trying to achieve. And it sounds like that's where your heart is too.
It is absolutely, and also I think it's important. Something else, a tool that I use. I'm a big baseball fan, and sometimes the umpire, their strike zone, it's not a good strike zone. All I ask is that if an umpire has a bad strike zone, it's the same bad strike zone in the top of the inning as it is in the bottom of the inning. And just because you belong to a political party or whatever you're involved in, don't stand by and just think that they have all the right answers or they can do no wrong. You have to call it out both ways. It is the American experience, the human experience is ongoing. We have great successes and great failures, but again, you have to keep going, but you have to call it both ways. And you got to call it fairly, because if you can point to another party and say they're doing wrong, but you don't have the courage, the minimum courage to call it out when your own party does it, then you don't really care about bringing us together. That's just
Right.
something you're throwing away. You're just being partisan at that point. Bad behavior is bad behavior. And until we call it out fairly and equally, then we really don't care. And that's fine. But just accept what you are and what you're subscribing to. You can't have it both ways. Either you're building and working together and going through the hard stuff, or you're just basically aligned into cult thinking that your side can do no wrong and the other side is to blame for everything. And both
Right.
are exceptionally dangerous.
Is there anything that you haven't said that you want to say to our listeners who are activists? And you can say no, we can just finish this up. But is there
Yeah.
something that you feel like you haven't said?
These are difficult times. I have been through personal healthcare tragedies, flooding. I was in the river with others, pulling people out. I watched my sister lose her husband and then her house in 2 weeks' time. I've held mill workers. I've had mill workers that lost their job come and pray for me. There are a lot of unknowns I have. There are days and anger, and I've been through trauma, but I still believe in the goodness and the toughness of this nation, and it's out there, but I also believe it's yet to be tapped. And I think having conversations like this matter. Again, if there's one person out there that runs for political office because of conversations of this or others, or have the opportunity to confront a bully, to tell their story, to demand their story is told, then it's all worth it. But this is a wonderful, great, loving, big country that its potential is yet to be reached. And it is scary times. And I do think, even being involved in politics, they all say this is the most important. Every election is the most important. No, guys, this is the most important election. This is people are watching. This is an election of character. This is an election of what our ideals are, and it will speak volumes. But I'm hopeful. I can't not be. I know how tough we are. I know what we've been through here in Canton. I've seen the cooperation. Don't give up, guys. Don't give up. Still believe in this country of what, not so matter what we are, but what we can be. That's something that's not lost on me. To me, it's not always about saying, hey, this is how bad it is now, but saying it's not what we are, what we were, but what we can be. It goes on, but it demands people getting involved, doing the right thing. When you have the chance to do something bad, do good. When you have the chance to do good, do great. Every day in our own gardens. Guys, keep going. It's worth fighting for. No offense. That's exactly what my grandfather, you think any of the people that came before and in these wars just said it's not worth fighting for? Too many sacrifices have been made even to do what we're doing right now. It's our job to carry on.
Thank you for listening to Freedom Over Fascism. Please leave a rating or review wherever you listen. And if you can, please subscribe at www.freedomoverfascism.us.